What is up, YouTube? JankyYGO here. My name is Michael, and in this video, we're going to be talking about Splights. Splights are a deck that have been tearing up the OCG, and their end board can look something like this, or they can have Parrot plus IP, and then these as well. There's a lot of boards that they can end on that make them very powerful. This is one of them. And people are saying they're going to be tier 0 over here in the TCG to follow suit with the OCG. That might not necessarily be true. But even if that is the case, I personally am fine with it because I have a take on tier 0 formats. A lot of people hate tier 0 formats because they think because that means only one deck is relevant. That's not entirely true. In tier 0 formats, how it works is one deck is the meta deck. It is the best deck, undisputed. But there are other decks that become relevant by proxy because more people are going to be playing that one deck than anything. And so there are these really niche archetypes that usually come out and decks that are only good versus this deck, or they're only like super good versus this deck, and they're pretty mediocre to bad against every other deck. And we're seeing this on the OCG as well with stuff like Exo Sisters. Now, Exo Sisters are getting more support, and it's going to make them a lot better. But I don't think that that support is necessarily going to make them a top tier contender, as they are in the OCG. They're getting like 3 to 6 spots every single time in the top thing. And then most of the deck is Splights after that, but it's mainly because Exo Sisters have a good matchup against Splight. Now, Splight, this is an example list. This is not a good list. This is just one I threw together. But Splights, a lot of people are saying that the reason they're so powerful is because they can search Max C. That is true. They can search Max C. However, one of the big contending factors is just because they can search Max C doesn't mean they are necessarily make or break. That doesn't mean Max C make or breaks this deck. It just means it has another power play. As we can see from this deck, I do not have Max C because the list is geared towards the TCG list. As if we go to the OCG list, we'd have to change it around immensely. So that being that Max C is at 3 over there, so we can drop Desires. We'd probably drop 2 of these, put in a Called By, and cut some of these and put in Max C. That'd be like the OCG list that you would go for. Now, tier 0 formats and Splights, I think, are both fun. In my honest opinion, I think that both decks are fun, and both formats are kind of fun. So if you play Splights, it might be miserable. And I think I think what comes down to it is why people hate tier 0 formats is because either their deck is so far down the totem pole for to fight against a tier 0 deck that they just don't like it, or they play the tier 0 deck and they hate the mirror matches. Because mirror matches in Yu-Gi-Oh are not fun usually. They're very like thought consuming, and you have to like outplay your opponent a lot of times. And you have to sit there and you have to like, okay, if they do this, I have to do that. If I do that, they have to do this, and stuff like that. And it also, and sometimes it just ultimately comes down to who drew the better hand, and that's not very fun in mirror matches. So in tier 0 formats, I understand why a lot of people hate them because of that. In my personal opinion, when you play a deck that isn't tier 0, the tier 0 deck, but is a powerful deck, or one that has an okay matchup. Doesn't have to be an amazing matchup, but has an okay matchup formats that are tier 0 can be very, very fun. Um, you get things like back in Zoo format. Zoo format was pretty fun because Zoo, you could just throw Zoo into anything. But we had a budget alternative that was very powerful. They could kind of contend with Zoo in certain aspects. In the dinosaur deck, you could buy like 3 of it, and it was probably fine. It wasn't like amazing, but it was fine if you just 3 of the structure deck. In this case, we have the Albaz deck. Now the Albaz deck, in with Splights, I'm not saying that a pure Albaz structure deck buying 3 of those is gonna be like amazing, but you're not completely out of the woodworks. I don't think. I think that this deck is going to be powerful, and I think that it might shake up the metagame when Splights come out in August. I believe is when the set is released. I might be wrong about that, but I don't know. I don't think they will be tier 0. And even if they are, I'm perfectly fine with that. Nothing they do really affects me, except for I guess that end board I showed you has a monster, a spell, and a spell negate, and an omni negate. But the board is pretty easy to out, and if you're really worried about specifically Splites, there are cards you can main deck to out that kind of board. You can main Dark Ruler no more if you're really that scared. Forbidden Droplets helps a lot and can bait out some of your stuff, and if you have graveyard synergies, it's gonna amazing. Plus, you can send a monster so they can't respond with the monster effect. So Forbidden Droplets is gonna be a very key factor in this deck. I think that overall, Flights aren't gonna be as powerful as they look, and as they might not be as dominating over here in the TCG. That's my standpoint on it. I do think that this deck is very, very powerful, and I do think that it has, potential to be a tier 0 deck. But I don't think it's going to happen here. And I think it's just a way that the TCG players and the OCG players look at different things and try different strategies. Our lists and our formats have very rarely ever, after a certain point in Yu-Gi-Oh! When we split our ban lists, our formats haven't really ever been quite the same. But anyway, that's gonna do it for this video. You can tell me what you think. Do you believe in all the hype of Splites, and do you think that they're gonna be tier 0, or do you think that it's just gonna go? It's just gonna be another good deck, or are you on the completely opposite side, and do you think Splites are gonna flop completely and do nothing over here? If you're on that side, you can feel free to, you know, make your argument and everything, and I'd love to hear it, because I don't think that'd be a hot take that I haven't seen much of, because I've seen some people who initially think that when they initially think that, they say, "Oh, you just Nibiru the deck," but you can't Nibiru the deck because of this card right here. But anyway, if it's your birthday today, happy birthday. And if you want to send me meaningful deck profiles or replays, you can send them to JankyYGO at gmail.com. And of course, and as always, have a wonderful day.